This episode is sponsored by Loop from CatholicVote. Let me tell you about Loop. It's a free daily news email delivered straight to your inbox every morning. It's got the most important headlines, short little news summaries, but also the best of Catholic blogging and social media, saint of the day, and the daily scripture readings, all from a 100% Catholic perspective. Loop does all the work for me by sifting through headlines and news sources and sending one email every day with what I need. So I know I'm staying informed on what's going on out in the world without having to spend my time figuring out who I can trust or what I need to know. The Loop helps me feel like I'm connected to what's going on in the world, which is part of what being Catholic is. And did I mention it's free? We can't just stick our heads in the sand and be sleepy Catholics when it comes to the realities facing our church and our nation today. We can't evangelize if we have no idea who we're trying to reach, and the Loop gives us such great Catholic insight into what's going on in the world. Loop is part of CatholicVote because it connects me with ways to take action to defend life, our religious freedom, and our rights as Americans. Sign up for the Loop from CatholicVote today and transform your media diet.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Jackie and Bobby. I'm Bobby Angel, one of your hosts, and today I'm talking with a friend, a father, a husband, Matt Warner, who is the founder of Flocknote, which is a communication all-in-one software tool that churches and parishes use around the United States, maybe even the world. He's on a mission to help the church communicate better. And he is an author, he's a speaker, and he is a fellow Texan. So I'm excited to talk with Matt today about communication, why effective communication matters, whether you're in the ministry world or not. And then particularly for leaders, people in the church, I think this is going to be a really helpful conversation about the new book he wrote, Why They Follow, Lessons in Church Communication from That One Lost Sheep. Matt Warner, how you doing?
Howdy, Bobby. It's good
Howdy
to see you.
Indeed.
Howdy. Yeah, it's awesome to be on here. I appreciate you. And yeah, like you said, we've been friends for a little while now, but I've watched you and Jackie for years and years and years. And I'm very honored to get to be on the show now rather than just watching.
Well, and you and Jackie have known each other longer. You guys go back much further.
Yeah, a long time ago, back when sort of Catholic world collided with new media a long time ago. We were both, I think out there in the mix, and it was a pretty small world back then. And yeah, I was lucky to know her back then and follow you guys' journey throughout the years now.
She told me she first talked to you on Twitter.
I'm sure that's probably true. Yeah.
And then that led to a meetup and meeting your family. And years later, we just welcomed baby number 5. I think you are expecting baby number 7. That's right.
Yep. Yeah, time flies, It doesn't seem like that long ago, but yeah, we were in that same, seeing each other at Catholic conferences and traveling around and Catholic social media, new media, and all that stuff. And yeah, so a lot has changed since then, but lots of blessings.
Yeah, amen. So we're going to talk today about communication, which is comical. We're going to talk about talking and why effective communication matters. So why should I listen to you, first of all? No, it's this thing that we do all the time, verbally and non-verbally. And it's like from trying to get a point across to our kids, to trying to clarify things with our spouses or our bosses, or even just a friend, like trying to communicate how we feel. Like talking, expressing ourselves is so much part of the human condition, and we can do that really well, or we can do that really poorly.
Yeah, I mean, it is a kind of linchpin skill to the entire human experience, right? Like you said, everything we do communicates something in every relationship, in every interaction, in every work task or whatever else. There's some form of communicating going on. And so I like to think of it as this kind of linchpin skill, but we don't often work on it a lot, especially you look at a lot of leaders in our church, but even as leaders of our families, as whatever job we have and trying to be good at our relationships. We practice lots of other kinds of skills, and we often learn lots of different things that we're interested in or trying to get better at. But we don't often focus on this sort of linchpin skill of communicating and making sure that we are good and effective at it. And, that can magnify or help us do everything else we do that much better. So it really is, again, at the heart of everything we do as humans.
Even God, as Christians, we say God creates through speech, through nonviolent speech, like communication, like the word of God. It's something that is just so intrinsic, as you said, to the human experience. And we can wound people in speech and language. We can heal and encourage and build up through our speech and our language. And so just from like small skills to big, we all have to look at like, how am I communicating? Is this an area that I need to grow in? I've had to have that gut check several times as the years have gone on. Like, my wife can't read my mind, or like my dorm mates can't just like pick up on my nonverbal messages. And just kind of feeling out like, and taking that hard question of like, where am I at in my communication skills and how can I improve that?
Yeah, and it's something we do our entire lives, hopefully, that we get better at. And I'm 42, and I've been in this business for 20 years, and I still have things today that I realize I'm like, I didn't realize I was doing that. Whether it was the way I was, interacting with somebody, or manipulating a situation subconsciously, or saying things that were not being received the way I thought they were, or whatever it was. So I'm still learning lots of lessons as you go. And so it's a humbling experience to sort of dig into, because you realize that you think you kind of got some of these down, or a lot of these assumptions you've made in the world. And you realize you're wrong about some of them, or there's still blind spots, or there's things you need to work on. So, which is all good. We all need to just keep getting better at these things. But like you said, communication, it is at the heart of God's creation. He spoke us into being. It's at the heart of our purpose, right? Communication, the Latin root of that is like to share in common. It means to share in common. And so the goal of communication is to bring about communion, which is what it means to be a saint, right? To be in communion with God. And of course, to evangelize is to help us be in communion with each other as a body of Christ, and help others be in communion with God. So communication is like right there. It's right there in everything we're trying to do as a church, in our purpose, in our creation of how God made us and what we're supposed to do. The end of our life, like what we're ordered to, is to commune. And so communication is the act of trying to do that in different ways. And so that's, sharing the good news is chiefly a task of communication. So again, we train a lot of our leaders in the church in good theology, in good, moral teaching, in liturgy, in pastoral ministry, in counseling, in discipleship, and whatever, all these different things. But we don't often train them directly, and as much as we should, in the act of communication and leadership. And so that was really the heart of why I wrote the book, is, working now at Flocknote for, how many years now? 14 years Flocknote's been around. And even before that, trying to help the church solve some of these communication challenges of people leaving the church. And, what we realize is you can create all these cool tools that are very powerful, all these digital tools in the world. We make software that helps churches and ministries better communicate, and they can do just as much damage with them as they can good, if you don't know how to use them well, which is to know how to communicate well. And so from the beginning, we started realizing like we need to help a lot of our leaders learn to just communicate better. And that was really this book is the fruit of a lot of that work over the years of trying to capture all these best practices and try to get to the heart of like, I know you want to have your email open rate go up. I know you want more people to show up. I know you want to raise more money. I know you want more people to come to know God and, be engaged in your community and all this stuff. But like, a tool's not going to fix all that for you. It's how you're using it that's more fundamental and more important. And, that's sort of how I organize the book as well, is to start with those more fundamental lessons and help people understand, what does it mean to communicate? Why is it important? But also, how do we do it well?
So much there. I love it. Just the fact that communication being at the core of the Christian mission, to go out and evangelize, spread the good news. Like, we have to talk about it. It's not enough to like, you've received this, now go sit in your room and all will be well. You are now commissioned to go out and communicate this to others, to people who desperately need it. And we continually need it and being reminded of it, because it is our destiny of communion with God. And we want everyone possible to be at that banquet table with us. And so
Yeah.
it's not for us to put under a bushel basket. And so using the tools we have for good, and you being at the forefront of seeing where that need was going, I want to hit pause for a sec and just ask you a bit of your own testimony. Did you grow up a disciple? Did you leave the church for a bit? And how did you specifically know you wanted to get into like media, communications, and devote your energy to this sector where you saw there's clearly a need?
Yeah, so I grew up in a wonderful Catholic family. It was, they taught me by their actions, and they communicated that it was important to go to Mass on Sunday, and we wouldn't miss Mass on Sunday. And so that was a beautiful gift that I was given growing up, that my faith was important, and it was worth, ordering our lives around a little bit and sacrificing for and making a central part of our life. So that was in me. But when I went away I guess I never really was challenged in my faith. Like, why are you Catholic? What's keeping you in the church? And I think as I became an adult into college and right out of college, I started having some of those challenges, whether from friends, people I knew, a girl I was dating, those kind of things. And I realized I didn't really have a good answer, that I couldn't tell people why I was Catholic. I just liked being Catholic. I love being Catholic. That's who I am. That's where I come from. That's what my family does. But I couldn't explain it. And I'd never really learned that. And so I started digging in as I started getting challenged in those different ways. And for me, it was reading books. And I just, I started picking up book after book after book after book. And it just blew me away. I had no idea we had so much treasure. And it just, the deeper I dig, the deeper it got and the bigger it got. And the more places to go and learn and going in this sort of beautiful journey through the faith opened up. And so it caught me on fire for sure. And at the time, the parish I was going to, it drove me to get more involved at the parish I was at, not too far from where you're at actually. And got really involved in the youth ministry program, ended up on the pastoral council, helping out with, some of the big events around town and things like that, because I just cared so much. I was on fire for it. And I saw this sort of trend, that as I was catching more on fire and realizing this is more valuable than I ever thought it was, all my peers, not all my peers, but most of my peers at the time were going the other direction, that they were finding it less valuable, that they were finding it less interesting and less relevant to their lives and less helpful. And they were leaving the faith in huge numbers. And so that sort of inspired me to want to fix some of that, because but at the heart of that was a communication problem, right? Like somehow I got the message, but somehow they didn't. And so what was the difference there? And so that inspired me to, again, get more involved and start looking into why these things were happening and then want to do something about it. And so I was a computer engineer at the time at Lockheed Martin up there actually. And loved my job, great people I was working with, and really interesting work, but just felt really called to start my own business, to do something, and in particular to do something to fix this problem. And so that is what ended up in the creation of Flocknote. I quit my job there, created Flocknote, and it took a long time for it to sort of figure out exactly what it needed to be. There was a lot of lessons we learned along the way of what worked, what didn't work, and then it just started to explode, and now it's expanded to over 10,000 churches using Flocknote. And it's been an incredible journey. But of course, along the way, we learned a lot of these lessons about what works, what doesn't. We've seen a lot of the best and worst, communicators in the church, like doing their thing and helping them and trying to help solve some of these problems. And so that was, again, why we wanted to write the book, is to sort of capture all of that in one place and then share it so that other people could learn from it.
I've personally worked with your team, with many of the Flocknote team members, and they're called happiness engineers. There's like the Chick-fil-A employees of the church software world, and I mean they go above and beyond. So I have nothing but good things to say of Flocknote, of this company you've created, and like the company culture there that genuinely wants to help parishes succeed. in communicating to their members and to reaching people. And I mean, like you said, like I mean, I could point to my own story where out of a Catholic school, K through 8th, graduating class of 22, it was massive. And I think only 2 or 3 of us still go to mass. And just how did I get the message and others didn't? And even then, it just was seeds sown that really didn't. It took the high school, college years to bloom. So it does break my heart for those that it didn't hear the message in a compelling way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you get in when you start digging into communication, and you've done this in different ways as well in your work, but like you realize it's a lot more complicated than just like throwing the seeds out there, and just sort of, and of course, this is the temptation with a lot of social media and other things these days, is like, I'm just going to step in here and just drop this little truth bomb, and then I've done my evangelization work for the day, But if we go back to like what communication is not just saying things. Communication, if it means to share in common with somebody, it means that it has actually been received on the other end. So they may not agree with it, you may not see it both the same way, whatever it is, but to some extent you've said something and then it's been received. So that's what communication is. So a lot of times we're saying a lot of things, but we're communicating very little because we're just sort of throwing it out there and thinking that's my job. But if we're going to really share the good news, means like share it in common, means that it was received on the other side. That's a lot more difficult and a more complicated task. And there's a lot more layers to it. And I think that I'm reminded of like the way God pours grace out upon us. Like he's always just pouring grace out on us. The limitation is not God. The limitation is our capacity to receive the grace that he's pouring out on us. So if we've made a lot of room in our lives for God and disposed ourselves in a way to receive grace, then we can receive the fruits of all of that grace. But if we've closed ourselves off and we haven't opened ourselves up in different ways, or we have a lot of vice or other sin that's keeping that grace from getting in there, then we cannot receive the grace. And so the limitation is on our end. And it's similar with any kind of communication, that when we communicate a message, a lot of times the limitation is on the person on the other end, their capacity to receive the message. So what's their state of mind? How are they seeing you? What's your relationship with that person? What's your history been up to that point? Like, what are they struggling with in their life right now? All of these other layers that are going to impact whether or not that person receives the message successfully or not. And of course, we have the parable of the sower in Scripture. That is a great example of this, where sometimes the seeds fall on rocky ground, sometimes they fall on the thorns, sometimes they fall in good soil. And sure, certainly there's elements of our lives where we're just going to sow seeds generously. And I think that's true. And sometimes it falls on rocky ground, sometimes it falls in good soil. That's beautiful, and we should do that. But there is an element to this of, if you want to communicate it, most of the work is in cultivating the soil. So helping cultivate soil, not just sowing the seeds part of it. And I think that, again, the book kind of digs into a lot of that it's very easy for us to reduce the communication part to just the email I'm sending, the thing I'm saying to my spouse or my children, or, whatever the case may be, where I'm trying to communicate something, the thing I'm posting online or whatever. But that's like a very tiny little part of the actual communication process. And it's a small part. It's important that what you say and how you say it's important, but it's a small part of your overall success.
The book is so readable. It's really short chapters. I flew through it, and you made it for group studies, for people
Right.
to get like a batch of it and then read it all together, and then really kind of wrestle with okay, what's resonating? What are we doing well, or what are we not doing well? And it's so easy to just get focused on the metrics of what was the open rate and associating some of these numbers with success, and look, it's landing. And it's not always the case. And as you said, it's difficult to get out of, this is the way we've always done it. I think COVID was a necessary shakeup in that regard for parishes and churches as a whole. It accelerated a lot of the fallout, I think, in this post-Christian culture we're in now. But I think there's also upturned soil and it's new chances for evangelization. But it also kind of sped up, like, I hate to say the word decay, but it's that kind of like, what is no longer bearing fruit? What do we need to relook at? And that's an exciting invitation to look at, how do we communicate in a better way, and not a way that just embraces every new tool because it's a new shiny digital tool, but what's actually in line with what we want to communicate. Like, what is it that we even want to communicate as a parish? Like, those are big questions that take time and humility to start asking and looking at, is there a better way to do this?
Yeah, that's at the heart of figuring out all those other stuff. If you want to know what tools you should use, if you want to know what metrics you should be measuring or looking at, if you want to know which ones are good or whether they should go up or down, if you want to know, whether you're doing well or not, you have to have something to measure that against, in the sense of, well, what are we trying to do in the first place? And I think it hopefully forced a lot of parishes. And you're right. Like, I think, COVID, I think just accelerated a lot of it either revealed a lot of the rot or decay more quickly, or it accelerated a lot of the people leaving the church more quickly. Unfortunately, like, a lot of the people that were going to drift out over the next couple of years just went home and stayed home. But it was already all happening. And so hopefully it's a healthy opportunity for us to examine those things. And I think, when you think about leadership, and again, the book is very focused on church leaders. So whether you're a volunteer leading up a ministry at your church, a pastor, a youth minister, a bishop, someone who works at the diocese, any kind of that kind of thing. So all the examples, and it's really focused on that. But of course, the principles apply to any element of your life, including families and leading a family, or your friends, or your community, or other things. So it's still relevant in those ways. But, I think it's important for them to all, like, where are we leading our people to? If you're a leader, then you're going somewhere. So if you're wondering why people aren't following or aren't engaging, then we should ask, well, where am I leading them? And now you can kind of give the vague answer, well, we're hoping to lead people to heaven. Okay, good. That's good. But how are you leading them there? Like, what's the way that your ministry or your parish or your community, like, how are you going to do that? Like, what are the concrete things? And this is where we get in. We have actually a short course that goes along with the book that's free. You can take at the website at whytheyfollow.com, that teaches you how to set big goals. Because I think what's missing a lot of times in our parishes, in our church, is like clear, concrete, big goals of like, where am I leading my people to? Because if they're not following, we got to ask, well, where am I leading them? Is that somewhere they want to go? Is that something they want to achieve? And do they believe that I can get them there? So that's kind of at the heart of why someone follows, is like, do they want to go where you're going? And do they believe that you can get them there? And so if you don't have a clear answer of like where you're leading your people and what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, then it's no surprise that they're not following. But it also then follows that we don't know, well, what kind of activities should we do? What kind of programs should we have? What kind of ministries should we support? What kind of things should we post online? Which, if we don't know what we're trying to achieve, then we can't measure it against whether it's working or not. And so it kind of backs all the way up to those more fundamental, foundational questions of where are we leading them? And is this somewhere they want to go? And all leaders need to ask themselves that question. And of course, at the heart of that is like, well, why does it matter if we lead someone there? And so I think that's another sort of fundamental thing that was brought to light in a lot of parishes, for Catholics in general, during COVID and the lockdowns, is we had to ask, well, how important is it that we go to Mass? And if we can't answer that question, is this just something nice to do when you can and it's easy? Or are we drowning and God is our Savior? Like, which one is it? And so this idea that something big is at stake is also something that's lacking in a lot of our leadership, that's kind of answered by like, where are you leading them and why does it matter? And do they believe you can get them there? So that, like, what's at stake? Is it important? Is it not? And I think that we were forced to answer some of those questions of like, how important is it? How many hoops should we be willing to jump through? What kind of risks are worth taking? Those are healthy conversations we need to have. And I think those were good overall. I think we'll look back on that as something that was a good opportunity for us to ask those questions and try to answer them.
It's the fire in the belly, like it's not just I should probably evangelize. It's like I need to evangelize. Like, how can I not speak of what God has done for me once we have been pierced by the love of God? Like, once we can't hold it in anymore. And what you said there too, I love this part of the book, by the way. It was like getting people off the couch. It's got to be something urgent. And you talk about spiritual complacency perhaps being the greatest block to Christianity today. It's very difficult to break through and communicate with somebody who just doesn't seem to care. And I taught at a Catholic school for almost 10 years, and just that kind of meh, like the culture of meh we're in right now. Like, I can't even, what can you do? I can't even, I just can't. Like breaking through that, like that just kind of inertia was so difficult. As you said, the modern attitude seems to be that everything in humans is basically all in order, like all is well. If that's true, then Jesus becomes just a great spiritual teacher and no longer a savior. And our churches become just nice groups of people to do life with rather than lifeboats. I was like, oh, yes, because like the urgency of like, guys, like this is life and life in abundance. John 10:10 that God wants us to be in. It's not to be miserable and follow rules and make your life comfortable. And once we kind of get that, like, yeah, this is important. Like, we can't just have mass digitally. Like, we need like the body and the blood, like in person. Like, this is worth going out and to all the corners of the earth, using all the tools at our disposal. Like, this is that important. Then we as leaders can even like put our own fears aside, because I've had my own fears I've had to overcome in life. I've had my own fear of failure, always present, to the point where like it stops me from even stepping out. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, according to Michael Scott, or Wayne Gretzky. Yeah. Like, so as like for leaders, like no matter if you are, as you said, in charge of a large ministry, a small Bible study, even just in your workplace, like if you've been baptized, you've been called by Christ to partake in the life of the sacraments, the life of the church, and share that with others in ways big and small, seen and unseen. And so we need that fire in the belly, the urgency, so that we can communicate. We can be willing to take risk and get into the game.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis said, Christianity is either of no importance or of infinite importance. The one thing it can't be is moderately important. And I think that that's just how it feels a lot of times in our communications in our parishes and in our experience of the church. Even as parents, like thinking about like how I communicated to my kids, you know, it's like, does the faith seem infinitely important, or does it seem kind of moderately important in our life? And I think like logically, it can't be moderately important. It's either of infinite importance or it's of no importance. He's either a liar, a lunatic, or a legend, or he's the Lord, and it's one or the other. It's either no important, not important, or infinitely important. And but I feel like most of the time my experience is, and I'm guilty of this too, it's like when we think about what we do in our life and the things it's like, is the faith just moderately important, or is it infinitely important? Because that's what our kids receive. That's the message they receive. So you talk about communication, let's get right to the family. And it's like, as a leader of my family, what am I communicating to my kids? I can say with my words all day long that Mass is important, God's important, your prayers are important, faith's important, reading scripture is important, whatever. But if they see it in our lives, the way we live our lives, that it's just moderately important, then that's how they're going to live. That's the message they will receive, is that the faith is moderately important. And guess what? When you grow up to be an adult, things that are moderately important don't happen. They don't. There's too many other urgent things in life that will take your attention. And there's this misconception that people are like more apathetic. Like you said, there's kind of this meh sort of culture in a sense. And they are about certain topics. But you take that same teenager that was kind of meh in class, and you go look on their social media account, or you go look at what they're talking about with their friends, and they are fired up about something. And people are not, and you can look at adults too, like look at how people are with politics or sports or, CrossFit or whatever the thing is, right? Like they are pumped up about it. So it's not that they're just complacent about everything. It's that they're complacent about the things that are most important in their lives and that they think something that they care about is at stake. And so if there's not much at stake with our faith, it's like, well, you can go, you can not go, you can pray, you can not pray. It's all about the same. Just try to do your best. Like that it doesn't work. No one lives that out when they get older because moderately important things won't get done. But what happens though, when great communicators are the ones driving the culture right now. And they're the ones that are out there, whether it's right or wrong, you can communicate falsehoods very well too. But if you're out there and someone knows like, hey, if the other party wins, it's the end of we're setting back our country 100 years. Like people think that, and they believe it. They're like, our country, what's at stake is our country could be set back 100 years in whatever progress or however they define it, right? They think something huge is at stake. And when they think something huge is at stake, they throw their money at it. They put their time into it. They spend hours a day on, reading things about it and talking about it with friends, and they bring it up in conversations with people. And so the goal is that what we need to think about as leaders of our families and of the church is how do we communicate what's at stake in our faith? Because when it's clear that something big and important is at stake, people respond.
I remember reading about Fulton Sheen, who was a bishop and great communicator, and talking about there's the messenger, there's the message, and then there's the receiver. And along that chain, if any of those things are off kilter, it doesn't work. Like the magic doesn't happen. And that just puts so much that helped me clarify. It's not as simple as I said this, and why didn't this person listen, or why didn't, it's like, was I off? Was the message off? Did something interrupt the message? Was there more noise that clouded the message? What's going on the receiver's end? So from trying to communicate within the family, even, it's like I said what I said as clearly as I could, but everyone is screaming, and the new baby is screaming, and all of a sudden I'm screaming. And so of course Jackie can't hear and understand what's going on. And even just, I found the helpful, like putting myself in the shoes of the listener. So again, if I'm trying to convey something to Jackie, I try to, in a few milliseconds, just assess like what's going on. Is she agitated by the kids? Is she got a lot on her mind? Is she in the frame of mind to receive what I want to say? As a teacher, I would do this. And as, being around parishes and working, and also like ministering to teens, like, is this person in a place to receive what I want to tell them? So like, as you said earlier about tilling the soil, being attentive to the soil and putting myself in their shoes and listening to what's going on, instead of, I want to say this, but have I earned the right for them to listen to me?
That's right. Yeah. That's, I think one of the fundamental themes in the book is like, we're probably not communicating exactly what we think we're communicating. And it goes to just what you're saying, that there's so many other things that there's so many other lenses that your message is being filtered through before it gets to that person on the other side. So yeah, you have the messenger, you have the message, and then you have the receiver, but like, there's all these things in the middle, right? And some of them are like, usually they're sort of more abstract things, but like someone's worldview, for instance, like when you're trying, like how they perceive things. Like I look online all the time and see how fruitless 99.9% of the conversations are, because people are just talking past each other because they obviously don't like see the world the same way. And so like, there's just no ground for meaningful debate. So it's like, you got to back up and you have to say, okay, where are you at? Like you're saying, what are you ready to receive right now? What can we agree on, that can at least give us something to start with so that we can build upon it. And that takes time. It takes patience. It takes being personal. And I think, again, a lot of the temptation today, whether it's as a leader of the church or a person online doing, their own evangelization or whatever, is we want to just sort of go quickly to everybody. It's like, I want to say something out to a large group of people and like make big leaps. And that's for the most part, failed miserably. The way, what we have to do is sort of slow down and work within the sphere of what God has provided. So He's given us people in our lives that we can build relationships with, and every message, really, I think almost most of it needs to happen one-on-one. Most good relationships are built in one-on-one situations, not like good relationships are built best in one-on-one situations, not in groups. And it's the same with any kind of, I think, evangelization is like being able to customize your message to the recipient. That's what makes it effective. So understanding where they're at, understanding what your relationship is, like you said, what have I earned? So if I just met somebody, I haven't earned the right yet to like call them out on a certain thing, right? In a way that's going to be effective. But if I've built a friendship with somebody, then you've earned not just the right, but the responsibility to help in certain ways, or to point out certain things, or to step into their life and help them in different ways. So, it's a lot of it's slowing down and making it more personal. Almost all of the communication, it's because that relationship is probably the biggest thing of whether somebody hears you or not. Is what's your relationship with them?
Well, and we hate we hate feeling duped too. Like we hate either like the mass market email where you're not really talking to me, so I will naturally tune it out. Right. Or you use the example in the book of when you get a letter in the mail and it looks handwritten.
I hate that.
and then you realize it's not. It's like some really savvy like print job, and even like the writing on the envelope looked handwritten. And you're like, oh, this person cared. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, those things have gotten so sophisticated now because it's a testament to how valuable like being personal is.
But how it backfires.
But it does eventually when they find out that it's not real, right? That it's fake. There's actually services where there's a machine that writes it with a pen, like a real pen on a paper, and it will mimic your handwriting. So you can upload your handwriting to it, and it'll take a pen and actually use your handwriting to write it over and over again. So you can pretend to have sent a personal message, a personally handwritten message to lots of people, which is honestly, that's just lying, right? It's dishonest because it's not really what you did. But yeah, those kind of tactics, again, those are marketing tactics. Those are when you're trying to like get cheap attention. If you're marketing to strangers, people you don't know, it's a terrible way to build a relationship with somebody, which is what we want to do when we're building our tribes, our families, our parish communities, and we're trying to evangelize. Like we want to build good relationships. So all those shortcuts are so counterproductive. We think they're going to get us there quicker, but yeah, they end up undoing relationships more than they're building them, which is really what you're trying to do, not just trying to get more opens or get more dollars or whatever.
It's what Christ did. Like he called and walked with people one-on-one, and he built up the relationships that led to the challenges and led to then you go out and do the same as me. And yeah, when I feel known, then I feel like I trust the leader and their vision, I'm all in. So if I feel like my pastor actually knows me, if I feel like I'm needed in this group, this like men's Bible study group or bingo, I don't know. Like if I feel like I have a role here and I'm needed, I'm not just kind of floating in and no one even knows if I'm here or not. Will anyone even notice if I'm gone or I don't show up?
Yep. That's, to me, I mean, of course, that gets the heart of our mission. So Uno's the one lost sheep. That's our part of our logo at Flocknote. It's at the heart of this whole book, which is the subtitles, Lessons in Church Communication from That One Lost Sheep. All the things we've learned at Flocknote, going after that one lost sheep. But that's the central lesson of that parable. Is like a sheep went missing. The shepherd noticed. He made huge sacrifices to go and find just that one and bring them back, and like that's the model for me of almost every single ministry is like, if someone goes missing, do you notice, do you know their name, and do you go after them? Like, that's it. If we did that at every one of our parishes, think about how different every parish would be. If when someone stopped showing up to mass, somebody noticed and they went after them in some sort of way. Like, how would that change everything? Because so much of it is that personal relationship. Someone came and because people know, I think one of the biggest drivers of whether people participate in something, which you just said, is like, do people care if I'm here or not? I might love the event. I might really be entertained by it. I might find it really helpful. But if I show up and no one seems to care if I'm there, no one seems to care if I'm not there when I don't show up, like, I kind of don't want to go anymore. And that is way more powerful than almost anything else, because we're humans. And so again, this just gets to the heart of that. It's like, when people show up, do you notice them? Do you know their name? And if they don't show up, do you miss them? Do you miss them at all? And do you go after them? That's just at the heart of all of it. And I think if we did that model more everywhere, we'd be in a lot better shape.
I mean, I've had times in my life where I was a lost sheep, and I was, by my own kind of cutting off from my community and the decisions I was making, and I had friends that were courageous enough to come find me, like call me out and say, like, you are not happy, and come on back, man. Like, you matter to us, and made all the difference in the world. And you pull that from Luke chapter 15, the parable of the lost sheep. And when that shepherd has found that sheep, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost." Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. And I've seen too, like, friends that I thought were like too far gone into this, like, drug activity or even gang life that came back. And I mean, the rejoicing that was there. So, to, like, just trying to tie it all together, like the urgency in the mission we have, the heart for those who have gone astray, friends, family members, colleagues, to evangelize in a way that we're called to do so in the sphere of respect that we've earned. Because as you said, if we come barging in and telling people what they're doing wrong or how to live, usually doesn't go well, even if we're kind of friends. There's got to be the tilling of the soil. There's got to be preparing the soil for the message to be the most effective. And are we walking the walk too? It's always like, am I doing my part to be trustworthy, to be a person of integrity, so that I could dare to communicate the message of the gospel?
Yeah. We think of ourselves as, it's the charitable, loving thing to do. It's that tough love, right? It's like, I'm going to just tell you what you need to hear. But it's actually not love at all, because it's cheap. It's a shortcut. And some, not to say there aren't times when people need that, but again, it's the question of, have you earned it? And not in the sense of, like, do you have a right to say it, but like, have you earned it? Like, will they even be receptive to it? Is it going to help or is it going to hurt? And I think the reason it's cheap is because what you're really being called to in that moment is not to, like, be brave and speak out and say the hard thing. Sometimes you might be, but I think more often than not, it's to, like, go on a journey with that person. It's to be inconvenienced by their life. It's to take time getting to know them and going into their world and putting yourself in their shoes, so that you can then build a real friendship with them, and that you can have a relationship that then allows you to really communicate and to reach that person in a way that's really helpful. And then you earn the right to say those kind of things that are going to actually help them, rather than just push them away. So again, that's not a clear-cut thing. Sometimes you are called to say that thing, but I think it's tempting for us. We do it more often than we should probably, and sort of call it courage or tough love, because we're actually avoiding the harder thing, which is like, I need to actually be inconvenienced by this person right now, and maybe for a while, maybe not just for this afternoon, but like for weeks or months or years, be inconvenienced by this person in my life. It's not what I want to do. It's not my favorite thing to do, or a favorite person to hang out with, or whatever it is they're struggling with, what it's going to mean for your life in some way. And that's really what we're sort of shirking, I think.
Well, that also requires listening.
Yeah, right.
So let's talk a little about listening.
Part of communicating. Yeah.
I had to take in the seminary, I had to take a course called pastoral counseling. And we were all excited because we were like, oh, finally we get to coach people and tell them how to fix their lives. And the whole first semester was on active listening.
Yeah. That should be that should be exactly how we think about our communicating, I think.
You had a room of 30 guys that were told there's nothing to fix. You can't fix people. We're going to teach you how to listen, not for a week or a month, but a whole semester. We were going nuts. But my wife is very happy. She's like, every guy should have to go through a course on active listening.
I'm sure I could benefit from that as well. Yeah, I think that's the first thing that goes to sort of a leader's mind. And it's fair enough. We're excited, right? Whether it's somebody who wants to evangelize their family, their friends, their parish, their diocese. It's like, I want to tell you something, and the first thing we should be thinking about is listening, right? It's figuring it, because otherwise it's like, what kind of soil am I sowing into here? You don't know yet. So you don't know what's going to be effective. You don't know the right thing to say yet. You don't know where to enter in that's going to actually be helpful in moving them forward in the right direction. You don't know what they're going to even be open to hearing yet. You don't know how they see the world yet. So you don't even know what language to use to be effective until you listen and learn all of those different things. So I think it's a big mistake when leaders, they look at all these tools for communicating today, and their first thought is, look at all the ways we can say things to people. And I think what we should be doing is saying, look at all the ways we can listen to our people. Look at all the ways we can learn what they're suffering through right now. Look at all the ways we can understand what they're going through better, because that's going to help us better serve them. And so I think, it's, one of the things we do at Flocknote is one of our guiding principles is to delight and surprise. So there's this, we want to in our interactions with them, delight and surprise them and make it a great interaction. But of course, this applies to your spouse or a friend or any kind of thing. When you want to delight and surprise somebody, it's just doing something that's good and generous, but that they don't expect, right? And one of the best ways to do that is just listen. If you ever want to think of a good present for someone, or you see, it's just pay attention when you go to their house. When I think about not that I'm that great at this or anything, but we were grilling at my dad's a few weeks ago, and it was Father's Day recently, right? And it was I'm on his grill, and it's his grill grate on his thing is just falling apart. It's rotten, right? And I'm okay, good gift idea, right? But it's he totally didn't expect that. It's not the normal thing I would get, but for Father's Day, he gets a new, grill grate or whatever. But those kind of things are easy wins, and they're everywhere. They're everywhere if we're willing to listen, if we're willing to pay attention. You'll hear what somebody says. You'll hear what they wish was different. You'll hear what they're struggling with. You'll see or observe something they need. So when you're paying attention, you see all these opportunities to serve and to take care of people in a way that actually communicates in a very powerful way. And it's memorable to people when those kind of things happen, and it gets their attention, and it speaks volumes about who you are, about your relationship, and it puts them in a much better relationship with you, to where you can grow and go deeper and serve them in other ways.
I love that. And then you asked your dad to cook you dinner after you gave him his brand new grill.
Oh yeah, he cooked us dinner. Yeah.
All right, Dad, back to work. The book has so many practical tips, and as I said, as a ministry leader, there was a lot that I was receiving that was blessing me, including as just a husband and a father and someone who hopes to try to communicate as best I can. As we start to land the plane, are there any of your favorite just tips and tricks that are included in the book?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the family, because to me, I can't tell you how many of these lessons I've learned just through having lots of kids and trying to be a good father and husband, because it really is applicable to all these different layers of life. And one of the sort of core lessons of the book too is the loudest thing you communicate, of course, is not what you say, it's through your actions. And so again, two questions around that, what do you sacrifice the most for in your life, and what is your whole life ordered around? So what do you make the most sacrifices for, and what is your life ordered around? That is what your children will receive, regardless of what you say, what you do, they will see that and they will receive that. And when they become adults, that will be in them in a way nothing else you ever did or said is. And so that's sort of one tip, and sort of theme in the book as well throughout it. In terms of other tips, I mean, there's tons. So the whole first half is sort of these guiding principles that we've talked about, more fundamental communication issues. The second half is a lot of practical tips. So things like how often should we send something out? So this is, again, getting like practical church leader kind of things. We get that question a lot. How often should I be sending people an email or posting something somewhere or whatever? Things like how to get better open rates, why some people listen and others don't, like why do they hear things differently than what you think they should be hearing them? How to say less and communicate more. I think this is a huge one, a huge lesson. I love the Blaise Pascal quote. I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead. And because it takes a lot more time and effort to like make something more elegant and short and compact and down to its essence, right? It takes a lot of work and time. So it's much easier to just run a long thing than it is to do the hard work to get it down to be short. But in this day and age, if you're not able to do that, you won't compete. There's too many other competing voices that if you're not able to get your message down to its essence and get it across quickly and in a short way, then people don't have time for it. Not because they're lazy, or in some cases they might be lazy, or people have like their brains have changed in a way where it's like they're not good at engaging long things. They like short things. And that's something we need to work against. And I think, but the truth is that people are capable of deep, long form stuff. We see that all the time. It just has to be something they're interested in. So we kind of blame it on like, oh, they don't like long stuff anymore. It's like, no, it's actually just bad quality. Right. So you've written a long letter or something, but it's actually just a bad quality. It's not, there's a lot of fluff in it that doesn't need to be in there. There's stuff that's not important. It's said multiple times, whatever. It's not, you haven't done the work of making it high quality and to the point, and so you can get it across quickly. Because that's what you're up against, right? So when people, they get bombarded with messages all day long from everywhere, but the ones that are winning have figured out how to do that. Now, some of them are obviously better than others in terms of whether you should be receiving them, but like they've at least done that. They've got it down to its essence in a way that grabs your attention. So that's one. Another big one is like how to ask for money. So we go over that in the book, which is a big one for churches, obviously, and ministries and nonprofits. Like, how do we ask for money? It's awkward. We feel, but there's some good tips in there for how to do that. But again, it gets back to the heart of like, do you have people that are excited to go do what you're trying to do? Do they want to go where you're leading them? Are they excited to get there? Is there something big at stake that they value and they care about? And have you clearly communicated that? Because if you haven't, like, yeah, meh, like, okay, I'll give a little because I feel guilty if I don't. But if you want people to give because they're excited about what you're doing, then you got to communicate all those other things. And all of a sudden, fundraising and asking for money gets fun because it's helping people do something more meaningful with their life. That one of the most meaningful things they could do, which is put their money to use for something good for the church. So anyway, there's a lot of those kind of practical things all packed into the second half of the book.
Yeah, no, and the brevity is close to my heart. I was an English major, and I had that hammered into my brain from one particular professor of word economy. Don't use a giant polysyllabus word when like a simple word will do. A shorter homily is a lot more difficult than a long rambling homily. Like it's tough to just kind of say it, pack a punch, and walk away.
That's right.
Have people.
It is. It's more work. You're right. It's way more prep to make that really good. Now you could just make a bad short one, but to make a really good short one is a lot more work than a long rambling one, like you said. Yeah.
And I know how much I'm bombarded with emails or just data or stuff trying to get my attention. So yeah, I apply that principle whenever I try to send a message or an email. I try to like just have it like, when am I going to, and that's the way I taught as well. It's like, would this lesson bore me? And if so, how can I change it up? And as you said, like stretch them, like challenge people in their attention span when the time comes for it. Like, because people can clearly handle 1.5 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour podcasts if they see it's clearly important. Like we're in the first hour of our 3 hour one right now, right? Matt, you feeling good?
I'm good.
Like people have the capacity. And so it's in the right context, like stretching people's diminishing attention spans. But when it comes to like communication and the message, like, keeping it short and sweet and using your words briefly, but well it just
Yeah.
goes
and
a long way.
The longer it is, the better it has to be, And so if you're not great at homilies, you're not great, whatever it is, keep it shorter. Like stick to what you like. Give them your best and keep it short, and it will be way more memorable and way more worth their time. And they'll thank you for it later, and they'll get something really good out of it. To make it longer, it has to be a lot better. And the other thing is like that first part earns the next part, earns their attention. So it's like they're going to give you the first 10 seconds. That's free, okay? Because we're here. If the first 10 seconds isn't that great, then you're not going to earn the next 3 minutes, And if the next 3 minutes isn't really great, you're not going to earn the next 10 minutes after that, or whatever the thing is. And so each part earns the next bit. And if it's not gripping enough, if it's not interesting enough, if it's not helpful enough to them, then they're going to tune out.
Even like as a parent, trying to communicate to my kids, knowing like, there's a butterfly and my son has explosions in Star Wars in his brain. Like,
Yeah.
Johnny, shoes in the car right now. We got to go. Like, I can stand there and give a lecture, but it's like, I got 5 words before I lose them. So
yeah, children are great teachers. I mean, there's just a few things better than like having to figure out like with your own. You have to be humble enough to look at it, but it's like, yeah, those kind of things. Just we could spend so long just thinking about what you just said with your son, where it's like what's going on in his brain, and like what did he receive when I yelled at him to get his shoes? It's like Dad's awful angry all the time, and he doesn't get his shoes, and he didn't get us to the car any quicker, and it made everyone else upset. But like what he received is like, Dad kind of yells a lot and he gets mad at me. I was just trying to enjoy this butterfly, and he doesn't apparently want me to, So it's like so much just wrapped up in that. But that's like, you could apply that same sort of thing to almost all of our interactions with people.
And then too, like communicating with a spouse, like John Paul II talked a lot about tenderness, in particular in his book Love and Responsibility, like putting myself in the shoes of the other person, as we mentioned earlier, and like how I communicate the thing is just as important, if not more, than the words I'm saying. Yeah. So am I being attentive, and am I displaying care? And as we talked about earlier with listening and having a heart for the other person is going to help the message, what I'm trying to convey, get across. And like, do I genuinely care enough to see where this person is and hopefully be received so that they can then receive me? And so, yeah, there's so much we could go on, and I don't want to make this episode too long, but
it's a topic worth digging into more. I hope people will, like I said at the beginning, it is a linchpin skill for all relationships, for all leadership. And again, when it comes to like our of course being parents as well, like how often do people get trained in how to communicate as a spouse or a father? Hardly ever, right? We just sort of pick it up and we hopefully figure it out. But like, this is one of the most important skills in our life, potentially, really. But then apply that now to leading the church, whether it's you're volunteering at a ministry or a youth minister or your parish or the diocese. This, like, again, we've spent years learning about the theology, and we should, and the liturgy, and all those things are really important. But if we can't communicate them, if we can't actually like implement them and engage using them because we don't have good communication skills, then they're not really that useful. And so like, this is that linchpin skill that we need to all have good training in. So I hope the book helps with that. That was the passion for writing it, is that, people could get like you said, it's a pretty quick read, but it's packed with a lot of stuff. And it's just all the lessons we've learned that I think will help leaders, assess and improve how they're communicating and be able to, put to use all their other great skills that they have that much more effectively.
And at the end of each chapter, you've got different discussion questions that got me thinking. It'll get anyone who's reading it kind of challenging themselves. And you've also made it ideally for group study too.
Yeah. So yeah, we made it so that a staff at a parish or a group of leaders for a ministry, or depending on your size, wherever you do, a diocesan staff, whatever, could all get copies of the book. And we have a 10-pack. We're going to have a 10-pack for sale as well. That's like a big discount if you get 10. I think it's like less than half the price of book if you get the 10-pack. So you can get it, give it to your staff, and then it's supposed to be a short read because not everybody loves reading long books. So something your whole staff can really do. Only takes them a few hours to read through it, and then take some notes with the easy, quick, sort of discussion questions at the end. But the point is to come back together and be able to discuss it and come away with a few things that you guys can do to improve what you're doing and be better at being the church.
Matt, this has been an awesome conversation. Where can people go to find out more about your work, Flocknote, etc.?
So yeah, flocknote.com. If you want to look at Flocknote for the book, it's whytheyfollow.com. So the title of the book, whytheyfollow.com. We have a couple of other free short courses on there as well on how to tell the great story and how to set big goals for your ministry or church, and some other resources as well that will be available on the website, and you can of course pick up the book.
We'll put all those links in the show notes below. Matt, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. Thank you for your yes to the Lord and to using your gifts and skills for the ministry. As I've said, I've been blessed by Flocknote and your team and their work. So thank you guys for all that you do.
Well, the same to you, Bobby. I've been blessed by you and Jackie for many, many years now. So thank you guys for all you're doing and for having me on.
Thanks so much for listening. Please check out Jackie and Bobby on our Patreon if you feel called to support us financially. But thank you so much for listening, for everyone watching. Tune in next time. God bless.